Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Wednesday, July 30th, 2014. There is some kind of intense news this morning. This is Drudge Report. Ebola man nearly reached USA. He died before he could board his flight. And fear in Charlotte. There is evidently a hospital with a hallway roped off, and they're testing for some mystery disease, and they're not telling people what it is. And Alex Jones is all about this morning, about how if somebody gets on an international flight, obviously they're screened. It's less likely that someone would bring plague into the country, but with open borders and thousands of people coming in every day, there is no way to oversee this kind of health concern. And evidently the biggest Ebola outbreak ever is going on. And I also noticed this article on Natural News from a few days ago, almost a week ago, deadly plague spreading in Colorado. Many aren't aware of this, but in the western U.S. especially, something as tiny as a flea can transmit life-threatening diseases that can spread into full-blown deadly plagues. So there is this kind of thing going on, and if you've ever watched the Stephen King movie The Stand, there's just the concept in that film of the government designing something. And in that film it was accidentally released, but in the film The 12 Monkeys, a plague was intentionally released, and that is a really interesting film. Bruce Willis stars in that, and a young Brad Pitt. It's there's a lot of depth. It's a Terry Gilliam directed film, and really probably in my top 20 favorite movies list. It's a brilliant movie, scary, sad. But if there is this intention of by the elite of destroying us, getting rid of us, and of course this is not a new concept, not something we've never heard about before or thought about. I wanted to just introduce this idea, Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Masque of the Red Death. In this story, the elite tried to escape from the plague by isolating themselves, and it failed. Their attempt to isolate themselves and protect themselves failed terrifyingly and horribly. So if the elite think that they would escape something like this, if they would trigger something like this under the belief that they would be able to escape it, that is not likely. And there's a whole other dimension to the idea of plague. I happen to believe that God is in absolute control over what happens. And yes, people can exercise free will and do horrible things, even on large scales, like atomic bombs. But God himself can stop plague. And there are a couple verses here. When the angel stretched out his hand toward Jerusalem to destroy it, the Lord relented from the calamity and said to the angel who destroyed the people, "It is enough. Now relax your hand." And that was the end of a plague. And the end of this plague came as a result of David crying out to the Lord. And of course, if we do experience this kind of tragedy, the elite, are trying to get rid of all the Christians. They're trying to kill the Christians, destroy the Christians. The level of tragedy with plague would probably see virtually everybody crying out to God for mercy, and would trigger repentance and probably revival. And I'm sure that's not what the elite desire. But you know, they don't have control. That's ultimately what I want to say. They can plan these things. They might, on paper, they might seem, you know, like this is what will happen. And to some extent, they have been successful in carrying out their plans. But God retains his position in heaven and can easily block the evil plans. And there are a lot of verses in the Psalms about the evil falling into the pit that they have dug for others. And evil plans have a way of coming back on those who are following them. And just as a little practical reminder from Natural News, garlic kills bubonic plague and other pathogen-based disease epidemics. I don't want to present these issues, these threats, in the light of fear. We can take action against these kinds of things. We can prepare. We can have garlic, colloidal silver, many other natural means of protecting against disease. Colloidal silver is, of course, one of my favorites, and I don't typically use it as an inhalant, but I did once when I had a sinus infection, and within the hour it was gone. I don't know, I wasn't tested for infection, but the symptoms were gone without any kind of drugs used to get rid of symptoms. So I'm a big believer in colloidal silver, and I'm really curious about what would happen if someone with a serious issue like Ebola would be given colloidal silver as an inhalant. And you know, there may be cures for Ebola. There may be means to recover that the elite know about that we don't know about. But we do know about all of these natural approaches to health. And we have an advantage in that. And I will leave that issue behind. And I don't want to dwell on that in fear. I think this is, you know, they would probably like to trigger fear in us because we are in a position to overcome the cabal soon, and in the spiritual realm, keeping us in fear and making us feel helpless are, you know, trigger thing. They empower evil in the spirit realm, those kind of emotions. I fully believe that. So if we can have an idea of being joyful and confident and filled with hope and love and joy, I believe that in itself is helpful in overcoming evil. But I'm moving on to this video, which I learned of from Dawn. It's older. It's from 2012. Changes on the Horizon, Dawn of the Golden Age. And this is an almost 3-hour video, but there's a lot of great information in here and some really interesting ideas, concepts. One of which is the suggestion, well, it's stated as fact, so I don't know, but the suggestion that Reagan was actually killed when he was shot and a clone took over for him. So all very interesting ideas here, but a lot of, again, tremendous helpful information. From John Rappaport's blog, Australia, Better Slave Than Dead. And, well, they're coming right out and saying it, that they're using this fear of a terror attack to the extent that they want people to accept slavery. It's because there's this threat, supposedly, of death. One from, actually, John Rappaport quotes InfoWars, one so-called liberal senator Ian MacDonald agreed, saying that he would rather be alive and lack privacy than dead with my privacy intact. Terrific, come right out with it, better a slave than dead. Yes, we're going to take away your privacy and freedom, but you'll still be breathing. And considering some of these issues, and what are we willing to live with? What are we willing to accept? And once we make a decision that we're not willing to accept these things, we're willing to press through. We're willing to, if necessary, sacrifice our lives. As more and more of us take that position, it's less likely that will become a reality, because it's difficult to control millions and millions and millions of people. There's a little bit of information here about Russia, and from Zero Hedge, U.S. will feel tangible losses. Russia prepares to unleash retaliatory trade wars. And I'm really not sure where all this is going. Fulford, in his last news update, reported, not this week's blog, which was, he's on a month-long hiatus, so we won't be hearing any news from Benjamin Fulford for about a month. But he has stated recently that this is meant as a distraction. What's happening with Ukraine, Russia, and even the borders are distractions. And I think the implication is that the real action is that the cabal is losing power and is going to be continue to diminish until they have no power left. And that cannot happen soon enough for me. But in the meantime, we are looking at this information about Russia and the almost Herculean effort to get us to hate Russia. They couldn't make us afraid enough of the Muslims, so now they have to give us a new villain, and that villain is Putin. And Alex Jones talked about the new Jack Ryan film, Hollywood Scripted Propaganda Against Russia. So I guess they had this waiting in the wings, and they're rolling all this out. And again, we're supposed to be deathly afraid of Putin and Russia and willing to go to war with them. Well, let's not, okay? I was going to say let's not and say we did, but we don't even need to say that we did. We can just say no, as we did with Syria. The American people just say to Congress and even the military, no, we're not going to do it. We're not going to support this. No, you can't do this. And like the tiny dot video that I had yesterday, there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And once we wise up, they will no longer be able to manipulate us and play us for fools the way they've been doing for quite some time now. Last week, I had a video that was an interview of Bill Still with Bill Binney. And William Binney was a guest on Alex Jones yesterday. And he's just so well-spoken and so obviously intelligent and cautious about what he says. There's a lot that he can't say because he has legal agreements. He's bound by legal agreements. And he respects those. But he's just a tremendous resource for liberty lovers, and very encouraging to know that men like this are serving the cause of truth and, of course, liberty and justice. And it's difficult for people to make Alex Jones and Matt Drudge and all of us appear foolish when this kind of man is aligned with the liberty movement and an advocate for other whistleblowers, because it's difficult when you hear him speak, when you see him, to accept anything extremely negative about him. It's obvious that he's wise and intelligent and well-intentioned. He recommended this website, exposefacts.org, for whistleblowing journalism and democracy. So it's a good resource. And for the good news of the day, Jesse Ventura triumphs over smear campaign media. And I've noticed in the news this morning on Facebook and different places a lot of information about, how Jesse Ventura sued a widow, and get the facts. And Alex presented some of the facts here. And Jesse Ventura is not my ideal liberty guy like William Binney. I mean, he doesn't have some of those characteristics that I mentioned. But he's bold, and he's honest, and he's a real person. And it's certainly, I think it's a positive to have people like him who have the ability in the position to speak out. So congratulations, Jesse, and I hope that we can all learn the facts about Jesse, what really happened, and maybe help other people to understand, because we don't all have to agree 100% in order to support one another and to some extent defend one another. When you consider, okay, you put Jesse opposite of somebody like Obama or Boehner, can we maybe overlook a few of Jesse's flaws? Because he is trying. He's trying to serve the cause of liberty and justice. And when somebody with a well-known name does that, if they can't, they try to kill their reputation. If they can't kill the reputation, eventually they will kill the person. But they want, just to simply put, they want to take all of us out. And they start with those who they perceive are most effective. And so the fact that they're doing this to Jesse, this smear campaign, is probably an indication that he is very effective. And therefore, maybe we can all help set the record straight. Thank you for tuning in for today's 99th Monkey Liberty News. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, and insist on liberty.